Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm David Tognarelli, Director of Sales and Business Development for First Northern Credit Union. Today's webinar is the final presentation of our May Financial Wellness Programming. One of our Community Development Representatives, Zachary Taylor, will be presenting today's webinar on financial first aid. Please download the handout attachment located on the right-hand side of your screen, which Zachary will reference several times during the presentation. We will also follow up with an email early next week with the materials that will be presented today. In addition to our regular monthly financial wellness webinars for not only our members, but the community at large, we will be hosting home buying webinars at the end of the month. So please visit fncu.org/seminars for additional information and to RSVP. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please ask them in the chat box or question area, or raise your virtual hand through the GoToWebinar platform and we will respond. Your questions come to us directly and are not shared with anyone else attending, so please don't be shy. We appreciate you joining us today, and with that, I'll turn the phone over to Mr. Taylor. It's all yours, Zachary.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, David. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful Saturday morning here. As David did mention, there's a handout associated with what I'm going to be presenting today. So definitely, if you get a chance, download that off of the GoToWebinar. I will reference it a few times throughout that. With that being said, let's go ahead and we'll dive right in on financial first aid. So let's take a quick look at some of the consequences of ignoring bills. I'm sure most of us are familiar with this, but dealing with a financial hardship can be extremely stressful. It's tempting to just want to ignore those bills so that you cannot pay and hope everything just kind of works out. But as we all know, again, this generally is not a good idea. So the consequences of ignoring those bills may include things up to higher interest rates, late fee charges, credit report damage, which we can fix through the long run, but these are consequences of that. Repossession of the loan collateral, such as the vehicle that you're loaning, they can repossess those. Loss of services, and even wage garnishment, where they start taking those payments directly from your wages before you see them. So instead of letting that just kind of run its course and happen, we want to try to take an active role in that. So to take action, the best way to handle that financial crisis, again, is to review and adjust your budget, prioritize your financial obligations, and definitely communicate with your creditors. You may not be able to pay all of your bills in full right away, but by taking a proactive approach to your finances, you can at least minimize the consequences until you can get back on your feet. Remember that a budget does consist of income versus your expenses, so we're going to take a look at that in the next few slides and how we may be able to adjust them to kind of help out with the situation and the crisis to get out of that. Okay, so let's assess our income. Obviously, if your expenses exceed your income, you're not going to be able to gain control as you're running in a deficit on that. So that's what we're trying to fix on the budget here, is to bring that income up and over and cut those expenses down on there so we have money to put towards what we need to. So first off, you would want to record all of your sources of income, including any realistic expectations of income that you will be receiving soon. By that, I mean, if it's a one-time bonus, yes, you can put it in there, but I wouldn't keep it on your monthly on there unless it's a guaranteed. You can use the chart that's on page 2 of the handout that I referenced earlier. Again, that is on the GoToWebinar software, completely free under the handout section. So if you want to, feel free to download that. That's page 2 that you can start putting some of your income on there. Think about ways that you may be able to increase your income. Now, this may be difficult for some people, but perhaps a second job, a little side weekend hustle, like power washing, anything like that, or even a one-time increase such as selling some of your goods or items that you have sitting around that you're not using. But again, when we're talking about realistic expectations, if you are selling items, realize that's a one-time thing. You can't take it back and then sell it again. So just be aware of that, but it definitely can help with getting out of some issues that you may have on there. So when we're talking about selling stuff, we're talking about assets. So let's go ahead and we'll jump right into assessing our assets on that. So again, you can list your assets on page 2 of the handout. Liquidizing assets is one way to pay for immediate expenses. That's what I was talking about when you're selling some of the items that you may have, other assets. We're talking about like 401k and stuff like that. So but you definitely need to consider the cost before doing anything like that if you are dipping into your 401k. For example, withdrawing money from a 401k can result in taxes and penalties of up to 45% of the amount withdrawn. That would leave you with less money for the future as well. So I definitely always recommend to reach out to your 401k provider, find out exactly what the taxes and penalties are for your specific case. Everyone's case is a little bit different depending on who they're going with and the age of retirement and stuff. So again, we're going to talk about communication a lot throughout this webinar, but reach out to your provider, find out what it is that you would be paying on that. But if this is the only way to save your home or to pay for your medical insurance, it definitely may be worth it, so definitely consider it. It is a good idea, as I said, to consult not only with your 401k provider, but with a financial professional before doing anything that definitely dips into your retirement or anything like that. Selling is not necessarily the only way to use those assets that you may have. Some retirement plans and cash value life insurance policies will let you borrow against their value. That is to say, take a loan against the value that you already have on there. Now, you do not have to pay penalties or taxes when you borrow against a retirement plan as long as you do not default on that loan. If you own a home that has equity in it, you may be able to get some money out of that through a home equity line of credit or a home line equity loan as well on there. Just keep in mind that you're putting your home up for collateral on that. So definitely, again, speak to a financial provider, see what the best route is for you. If that's an option that you are considering or want to find out more about, we do offer home equity loans and lines of credits through First Northern Credit Union. So again, you can reach out directly to us at the end of this and we can discuss all of that or put you in touch with who you would need to speak with to go a little bit further on that. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our expenses. I generally say that this is the category that we have a lot more I suppose, play in that. You can use the current column in the chart on page 4 of the handout to start listing what you are currently spending your money on. For example, people increasing income may not, again, be the most practical, but almost everyone can reduce their spending in some type of way. Honestly, assess what is necessary to you, like what is actually necessary and what can be reduced, eliminated, postponed, or even substituted for something cheaper. I say that because groceries tend to be everyone's highest expense weekly or monthly on that. So if you can find a substitute for perhaps the more expensive item that you like to eat, be it meat or I know I do almond milk. So if there is a cheaper brand, definitely check that out. You'd be surprised how much off brands will add up on savings when you get there. Coupons, definitely check out coupons if you can spare a little bit of time. That will save you some money and cut some expenses. As far as that, I do have some tips when it comes to cutting expenses, and that would include going through your monthly subscriptions. The easiest way to do that is to print off a month or two of your bank account that you usually use to pay bills, or print off a credit card statement if that's what you use to pay your bills, and just take a look at what you're paying monthly on, be that Netflix, your phone, cable bill. Be aware that most of the time when you get onto a cable bill or an internet bill, you're usually on a promotional rate for those first 12 months and then, or however long they have it set for. And then it's always good to call back in a month or two before that and see what new promotions they have going. Because I know for me personally, my internet would go from $45 if I just let it run its course. It would jump up to $90 a month. So I call 1 month before and I always see what the new promo is, and I stay right around 40, 45 for internet. So definitely stay on top of any monthly bills that you have. Cut out the ones that you don't need while you're going through a crisis. And you can always reactivate them later on if you need to. So that's some tips to definitely cut some expenses where you can. Other than expenses, we do have debts. So let's take a look at that. When I'm talking about debts, we're talking about your mortgages, your car loans, student loans, credit cards, personal loans, back taxes if you have anything like that. When you are experiencing a bill paying crisis, it can be depressing to think about how much or how many people you do owe. But again, it is essential that you take an accurate inventory of your debt. Don't hide from it. Try to be proactive on that. Open up all of your bills that are coming in. Check the websites if you don't get paper bills. And if you need to, don't be afraid to call your creditors to verify your current balances. If you don't know what you're working with or what needs to be paid back, we can't establish the best plan that works for us. Again, on the handout on page 5, you can use the chart to start listing your debts on there. Once we've gone through all of those and we've gotten those numbers listed into the charts, we're going to take a quick review of our financial position, see where we're sitting at, what we have coming in, what's going out. That's the whole purpose of our budget. So how do you know if you've made enough changes to stabilize your financial situation? Well, using the information from the charts that you've put on there, subtract your expenses and your debt payments from your expected income. If you have a surplus, meaning that you have more income coming in than expense going out, then you're in good shape. We've got some money to play around with and put towards the bills that we need to and make the adjustments where we can on there. However, if you are in a deficit, meaning that your expenses, your debts are still higher than your income, we've got to go back through it, see if there's any other positions that we can cut from, or sit down and see if we can squeeze in any other ways of income, a second job if we can, temporarily till we get back on our feet, anything like that. We got to do that until we get as close as we can to being more income than expenses. However, sometimes that's just not possible, in which case we need to prioritize our expenses. So, like I said, making adjustments to your budget could take time, and you may not still have enough money to pay all of your bills immediately. Unfortunately, that happens, and you may have to make the unpleasant decision what bills will go unpaid or what ones are not going to be paid in full or on time. That happens. That's part of a crisis. Again, being proactive kind of takes away a little bit of that difficulty. However, we still got to make those choices. There's no right answer here, and everyone's situation does differ, but try to aim for your necessities first, like rent and food, before other items like your cell phone, again, Netflix, internet, anything like that. I keep reiterating this, but, we may have to suffer that for a little bit, but once we get back on our feet, we can always turn back on those other things. So, don't see it as a punishment. It's not. We want to get out of the crisis that we're in, but we don't want to lose the roof over our head, and we want to make sure our bellies are still full. So that is what we're targeting when we're looking at prioritizing our expenses. Some things we can't really change on there as much, like child support, back taxes. We're going to have to figure out some things for that, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Okay, as I mentioned in the very beginning, we definitely want to communicate with our creditors. For any bill that you cannot pay in full or feel you will not be able to pay in the near future, you should definitely contact that creditor or service provider immediately. Some may do nothing. That's just how life works on that. But many creditors are willing to help consumers facing a hardship. So if you take a look at the slide that's up there with there's some tips as far as when you're talking to these creditors and you call in. Get some of this ready before you make the call. You want to have specifics. You want to be honest with them about the reason for the hardship. Sometimes they have different things that go specifically with that hardship that'll work. So if you're honest with them, that helps out. Having a plan for how you're going to pay that back in the future. If you give them some ideas, maybe they can work with you, a payment plan, anything like that. Remain calm and polite. I know financial crises or having difficulty paying bills, anything like that, is emotionally stressful, and we want to take that out on the first person we talk to. But 9 times out of 10, the person you're calling really had nothing to do with what's going on, and they want to help you, but they also don't want to be berated when you call in. So try to stay as calm as you can on there. Be polite. If they're not helping as much as you feel they can, don't be afraid to ask to speak to a supervisor. That's completely okay. The first person you call into may not have access to all of the promos or ways to help you. Just, again, try to be polite and calm and do that in the most respectful way that you can. Like, hey, I appreciate what you're trying to do for me. However, I don't feel we're getting anywhere. Could I please speak to a supervisor and see if there's something else that perhaps they can do that you can't? Again, thank you for trying to help me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the way that we come off is the more they want to help us is how I've always had that situation work out. If they do give you some type of option, don't make a promise that you can't keep. So let's say your bill is normally $50 a month for whatever. They say, okay, well, we can cut it down to 25 for a month on there. If you still can't make that 25, don't say, oh, that's great, that's wonderful. Be honest with them. I'm sorry, right now, all I can do is $10 a month. Can we work with that? Because if you make that promise and then you still miss it, then it wasn't worth the call in the first place. It didn't help anything out on there. So definitely be honest again, and don't promise things that you can't keep on there. Biggest tip is definitely keep the record of the call. So when you first call in, they'll introduce who they are, write down who it is you're talking to. If you do any transfers or you get moved up, definitely write down who it is you're getting transferred to, who you're talking to. That's going to come in great for you later if there is any kind of discrepancy. You can say, no, I spoke with XYZ on this date at this time, and this is what was said. So definitely do that, be persistent, and you'd be surprised kind of how willing people are to work with you to try to get these things paid off, or at least set up a payment plan, because of course the creditor wants to get paid. Of course they would love to get paid the full amount that is agreed on, but bringing in any money is better than bringing in none. So they'll try to work with you if they can on there. Okay, let's talk about handling those housing payments. Whether you rent or own, you making your housing payments should be, again, your first priority. You want to keep a roof over your head if you can. If you do not pay your mortgage, your house can be foreclosed on. If you do not pay rent, you can be evicted. Right now, there's different things going on federally for moratoriums and stuff like that, but I'm not going to dive too deep into that on this webinar. Still, sometimes people find themselves in a situation where they just cannot keep up with the payments. It happens. We want to have a plan. If you do not find yourself in this situation where you can make it, definitely contact your lender or landlord immediately. Again, just letting them know what's going on, seeing if there is some way that they can help you out. If there is a payment plan, maybe reduced rent, reduced payments at the time. So we're going to talk about all of that. If you're worried about the long-term affordability of your mortgage or are not particularly attached to your home, selling it may make the most sense. It's definitely a seller's market right now, so that's always an option. But if you are making those payments or can't make those payments and you do want to stay in that home, again, like I said, reach out to your lender and see what they can do, perhaps a refinance, maybe bringing those mortgage payments a little bit lower for now, and then you pay the rest of it at a later date. That's definitely something that should be assessed and see if that's something that can do. Like I said, they may allow you to send in a reduced payment now. You would have to pay the larger portion off later or modify your loan to fit that in. But if you don't call, you won't know that, and then you're just kind of jumping through hoops until something happens on that. Now, if you are a renter, the landlord may be willing to accept reduced rent for a few months or allow you to make up missed payments over time. Some might not, and that's okay as well. Just again, if we don't reach out, we don't know what's going. Leaving and renting a cheaper place is another option, but you have to be aware if you had a lease, you're going to be responsible for whatever it says in the lease, if that's the remaining month's rent or a breach of the lease term one-time payment. Definitely find out what that is. You should always have a copy of your lease or rental agreement so you can kind of look through and see what's going on. However, sometimes the landlord may voluntarily release you from the lease if you explain your hardship, or if they're able to find a suitable replacement in time where they're not going months without someone renting the place. They may work with you on that as well. So again, I keep preaching it, but reach out to your creditors, reach out to whoever it is that you owe the money, see what they're willing to work with you, if they are willing to work with you, before making any other hasty decisions, anything like that. Okay, let's talk about car loans and how we should handle that. Again, some of it's going to sound repetitive when I say reach out, but we are going to want to reach out. So in many states, a car can be repossessed after only one missed payment. So if you cannot make your payments, it's definitely a good idea to call your lender. Lenders are sometimes willing to extend loans to cover missed payments or to set up repayment plans. However, other possible options include refinancing the vehicle or even selling the vehicle. If the car is just too expensive, reselling it and buying, a point A to B vehicle is always an option as well until you get back on your feet, and then you can reassess if you want to try to go up to a nicer vehicle again. Some people even choose to give the vehicle back to the lender instead of waiting for them to come take it. This is what's known as a voluntary repossession. So that would be like dropping it back off at the credit union, dropping it back off at the dealership so that they don't have to send someone out to repossess it. Sometimes the lender will work with you on that if you work with them, so they don't have to send someone out. It's not a law that they have to. So again, reach out, talk to them, see if they will do something like that for you first. But yes, be aware that a voluntary repossession is no different than a regular repossession. So unless you talk to the lender, see what works best for you on that. My biggest tip on that one is if you can resell it and get closer and buy a cheaper vehicle that works from A to B, that tends to be one of the better situations on there or options to go. But again, everyone's position is different. Utilities, we're talking about lights, water, various things like that. Paying your mortgage or rent is more important than paying your credit card bill, but we're going to talk about that later. Right now, we're looking at your utilities. So delinquent utility payments can cause your service to be suspended or terminated, but some utilities are more important than others as well. If a service is not needed and cannot be paid, you may want to just cancel it and then deal with the cancellation fee when you have a chance on there later. If a service is needed, however, make sure that you do call the utility company and ask about payment arrangements. You may not have to pay the full amount owed right away. I know there's a lot of different hardship possibilities out there, especially when it comes to keeping your lights on or keeping the water running. And then depending on what state you're in, sometimes they have mandatory ones where it has to stay on if the weather is below a certain amount. Anything like that. You won't know much of this unless you call and ask what's available on there. You can also see if they have any payment assistant programs. So there's more and more of those coming up right now as well, being added by federal funds and various programs. So before anything gets cut off and you have to pay a reactivation fee, anything like that, contact them. Just give them a call. Say, hey, next month's looking like this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this payment. Is there any kind of program that is available right now or assistance where a portion of it could be covered on there? And they will either tell you yes and what it is or no. And then you can kind of make that decision of, oh, do I need this utility or should I cancel that? X, Y, Z, whatever works best for, again, your situation. Insurance, this one can be a little bit of a difficult topic on there. Of course, it's best to work with your current insurer to prevent your policy from getting canceled, because if it is, you may find it difficult to get new coverage or you may have to pay a large amount to reinstate your policy. That's known as like insurance lapses and stuff like that, which makes it very difficult on there. However, you may be able to lower your car insurance premiums by increasing your deductible. When I say that, you would call them, see what the difference in your monthly payment would be if you raised your deductible. So if you got into an accident or something happened, you would pay a larger portion of the actual incident on there, but your monthly payment would be lower. So that's a cost benefit analysis for you to do if that seems worth it for you. If you do fully own your vehicle, you may even want to try switching just to liability only coverage rather than comp and collision. That's always an option as well, and that can save you quite a bit of money while you're going through the financial crisis. And then again, you can always bump it back up once you get back on your feet or get your budget working for you on there. If you have life insurance, it can be tempting to let that life insurance policy lapse, but consider what would happen if anything were to happen after that, because if it lapses, you're not going to get that money paid out. You could even possibly lose all of the money that you paid into it, and most of these policies are multi-year policies, so anything you paid in, if it lapses, you could lose every bit of that. So definitely weigh that on your priority list on there. If you have a cash value policy, you may be able to use some of the cash value to pay your premiums, or switch to a term policy, which again usually tends to be cheaper. Reducing coverage instead of canceling the policy completely may be another option. Definitely reach out and discuss what your options are with your insurance agent, what's available, and what would keep it current without lapsing on there. They may have some options you've never heard of before, so reach out, see what's available. Some people have their health insurance paid for completely by their employers, but many of us do not on there. So the premiums for a standard policy can be astronomical, as many of us are aware on that. If your income is below a certain limit or you are pregnant or disabled, you may be able to get coverage through Medicaid or a state health insurance program. So you would just call the offices for that or stop in if they're allowing people to come in and see if you qualify and what that would entail. Otherwise, if you cannot afford the premiums for a regular policy, you may want to look into catastrophic medical insurance. Catastrophic medical insurance only covers major medical events like hospital stays, and therefore the premiums tend to be a little bit more affordable for that as well. Again, cost benefit weigh if that would be an option for you. The whole gist of this is we want to cut as many expenses and lower as many costs as we can until we can get back on our feet and readjust from there. Now, as I brought up earlier, paying your mortgage or rent is definitely more important than paying a credit card bill, but you have to keep in mind that neglecting unsecured debt, especially if it is done for a long period of time, can result in collections, legal actions, and even credit report damage. Now, credit report damage can be built back up over time to get a good credit score again, but it does take quite a period of time on there as long as you're doing everything right. So definitely think about that as well. Fortunately, there's often some flexibility with unsecured debt. Many creditors offer, again, a hardship program of some type, short-term payment arrangements that can allow you to make smaller payments, and even creditors will allow the interest rate to be lowered if that's possible. So you would want to reach out to whoever your creditor is on that one, see if they offer something or if they can lower an interest for you so that's not snowballing on you on the back end while those payments aren't being made. Again, most creditors would like to take in some type of money rather than none. So, if you don't reach out, you're not going to know if they're willing to work with you on that. Okay, student loans, not everyone has them, but borrowers experiencing a financial difficulty with the student loans can often get a temporary suspension of payments through a forbearance or deferment. I know right now all federal student loans are deferred right now, so if yours is private, you would want to still reach out to the person that you did borrow from and see if they can do a forbearance, deferment, anything like that as well. All federal ones right now are already mandated to be deferred. So keep an eye on when that does come back so you can fit that into your budget though. Additionally, some borrowers may qualify for lower payments through an alternative repayment plan. This one's known as an income sensitive repayment plan. If you're behind, you may be able to become current by consolidating your loans, which is just essentially getting a larger loan to tuck all of your loans into, and then you're making one payment that does interest rather than all of them. So that's always an option on there. Defaulted borrowers with public student loans also have a one-time right to get out of default with a reasonable and affordable repayment plan. So again, reach out to whoever the borrower is, log into the federal site to take a look at it if yours are federal, and just see what's available, see if you can fit into the income-based one. That one's great if you're just getting out of college because normally it'll scale with your career. So usually when you get out of college, you're making a lower point, and then so you're making lower payments, and then as you get the experience and you work your way up the ladder, you're making more money and then making larger payments. So definitely look at that and see what works out best for you. Child support, alimony, again, not everyone has that issue to deal with, but if you do, we all know how that can feel. So child support and alimony are not expenses that can easily be reduced. If there's a formal court order in place and you want to have the payment amount modified, you have to go back to court to do that. It is likely that you'll need the assistance of a lawyer or at the very least a legal typing service, which can be pricey unless they do some pro bono work, stuff like that. Keep in mind that the modifications are not retroactive. That means that even if you get the amount lowered, that's for any future payments. Anything from the past, you're still going to owe that and have to work that out on the end there. So just be aware. That's not to say you don't want to go in and get it lowered if you can. Do the best you can, but remember that is for future payments. Taxes. This can definitely be a headache for a lot of people if you do get behind or have any issues with the IRS. The IRS is generally willing to work with the taxpayer who does want to get back on track. If you haven't filed in years past, try to do that as soon as you can. It is a crime to not file a tax return when you do owe taxes. If you cannot pay the amount owed in full, you may be able to set up a monthly repayment plan or establish an offer in compromise. What that is a settlement of debt for less than the amount that's fully owed. So you may be able to say, okay, I owe $10,000 of back taxes. What I can pay is $7,000, and if they're okay with that, then that would settle it. But again, you would need to reach out and speak to the IRS. Right now, I know there's excessively wild wait times to even reach out to the IRS. So the sooner that you can try to handle any of these things, the better. With all of that being said, if you have ever received a collection call, you know just how aggressive they can be. You have to be aware that you do have rights in this situation. It's generally in your best interest to communicate with your creditors, but you do not need to put up with abuse. The Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, or FDCPA for short, does regulate what a collection agency's conduct towards the consumer is, and it does prohibit bill collectors from calling you multiple times a day or at inconvenient times, contacting you at work if you tell them that your employer disapproves of that, letting a third party know that they are trying to collect a debt from you, or using false threats, obscenities, racial slurs, or insults. If they're doing any of those, there are ways to file against that because they are going against your rights. Additionally, if you send a written request to the collection agency to cease communication with you, they must do so, with the exception of being able to notify you once to let you know that the action they plan to take against the debt, be that, collections or anything like that. A sample cease and desist letter is in the handout on page 11. However, before sending it, do keep in mind that if you cut off contact with a bill collector, they may feel they have no other choice than to sue you or take you to small claims court. So just be aware of that, think about that, and again, whatever your situation is may be different than someone else's, so I don't have a best practice for that one other than to communicate and see what your options are. Now, we did talk about late payments and stuff affecting your credit. If that does happen, again, don't stress it. Credit can be rebuilt. It just takes time and effort, but it can be done. Late payments and most other negative information can remain on your credit report for up to 7 years. No one wants to have a bad credit score, and if you have the capacity to make your payments on time or in full, of course, you should do that. However, if you do not have the capacity to pay all of your bills and cannot work out agreements with your creditors, don't beat yourself up if your credit does take that hit. Keeping a roof over your head and food in your belly is more important than having that perfect credit score. Once you have gotten through the crisis, however, you will hopefully be in a better position to work on rebuilding your credit, try to resume making your payments on time and keeping your balances on the revolving debt, credit cards, etc. low or non-existent if you can. If all of your accounts were closed through whatever issues you were having on there, you can look into opening a new account. However, with a lower credit score, you may need a co-signer, so be aware of that. A secured credit card is another option. We do have some different credit rebuilding options through First Northern Credit Union, so if that's something you're looking to do, again, reach out to us at the end and we'll put you in the right direction or give you the information that you need on that. Again, secured credit cards require you to make essentially initial deposit, which the creditor gets to keep if you do not make the payments, but making those payments on it does slowly rebuild back up your credit. With all of that being said, that brings us to the final topic. My final little tip on there is as soon as you get back on your feet, try to start saving. Even the smallest amount adds up over time. If you get into one financial crisis and you can make it through it, that's wonderful. The stats unfortunately show that many families do face more than one hardship throughout the course of their lives. That's just a given for many people on there. It does happen, but you can better prepare yourself for it. And one of the best ways to prepare for a financial crisis is to have that emergency savings. Most financial experts will recommend that you set aside at least 3 to 6 months worth of essential living expenses. Of course, saving may be difficult now, but once your situation does stabilize and you start to set aside that money, again, be it as little as $5, $10 a month, it does add up quickly on there. So the sooner you start, the sooner that can start to grow. You may even consider having some of your paycheck directly deposited into that savings account so that it doesn't feel like it's taking your own money from you, out of sight, out of mind, and then it just builds on its own. That's always a great option on there. But pretty soon you will be able to log into your account and you'll see a nice little sum in there, and that will make you feel a little bit better, a little bit more secure if something were to happen, that you can make those issues. And if you're not at that point right now, again, don't stress it. I think the statistic is that 8 out of 10 families can't afford, a one-time 300 tire or car maintenance issue. You're not alone, but you're taking those first steps to join us here and get these ideas, and that's fantastic. With that being said, that is all of the last tips that I have on here. I'm going to pass the microphone back over to David to see any questions that came in, if there were any that he wasn't able to answer or that I need to elaborate on there, and then we'll wrap it up, and you guys can enjoy the rest of your weekend. David?
Thank you, Zachary. That was such a great presentation, and all the information you presented today was really insightful. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We do always hope that you walk away with a little bit more knowledge on the subject we presented, but also to remind you of some basics that you may have already known. Again, we will follow up early next week with the PowerPoint that was presented today. In the meantime, please do email us with any questions you have regarding the presentation or anything regarding financial wellness and First Northern Credit Union membership. And with that, I will let Zachary have the final word, but thanks everyone and have a great day.
Perfect. Thank you. I want to reiterate what David said and just say thank you so much for showing up and hanging out with us while we go over all of this topic. Again, it is so great, and that is the first step on anything. I don't believe anyone is born a financial expert right off the bat. You have to go out there and learn different items that are going on or what different options you may have, and you're doing that by showing up for the webinars. As David said at the very beginning, we do host a monthly series every single month on there. So if you want to check that out, check out fncu.org/seminars to see what's upcoming, and maybe something else that you want to learn is on there. If so, we look forward to seeing you then. But other than that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And again, thank you so much for joining us.